Okay, we are on Samach Hamad Aleph, the very top, 60A1, the very beginning. So, what? 60A1, the very beginning. So the Mishnah said, these are the malachos that a woman does to her husband. She grinds the flour and bakes and laundry and cooks and nurses her son, makes the bed, works with wool. So, by the way, Rishonim say that these are 7 big malachos, but smaller things like pouring a drink for him or small things it didn't mention. But this isn't the limit. This isn't the all inclusive list. But those are the main things. So one of the things is about nursing. So we're going to talk about nursing, and we said that once the baby recognizes the mother, she can't stop nursing him because then it's going to be dangerous because then the baby won't nurse from anyone else. So ad kama, how long does it take till the baby recognizes the mother, and if she's nursed the baby that long, she's has to continue nursing him or her. Amar Rav Amar Rava, Amar Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav, Shlosha Chadashim. Rav in the name of Yirmiyah bar Abba in the name of Rav said 3 months. Ushmuel Amar Shloshim Yom. Shmuel said 30 days. Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Yochanan Chamishim Yom. Rabbi Yitzchak said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan 50 days. Amar Rav Simi bar Abaye halacha Rabbi Yitzchak Shamar Mishum Rabbi Yochanan. The halacha is like Rabbi Yitzchak, who said the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that it's 50 days. If once she's nursed the baby for 50 days, she can't stop nursing the baby. Bishlama Rav Rabbi Yochanan Kol Chad B'Chad Ki Chorfei. We understand the opinion of what Rav said in the name of Rav, which was 3 months, and the Rabbi Yochanan, which was 50 days, because it depends. There's some kids who catch on quicker and some who don't catch on as quick. So a real sharp kid, after 50 days, will already recognize his mother. And the kids who aren't so sharp, it'll take them 3 months. But we understand the amount of 3 months and 50 days. But what's Shmuel's opinion? 30 days. There's no baby who, after only 30 days, is going to recognize the mother already and then refuse to nurse from a different nursemaid. So Rami Bar Yecheskel said, don't pay attention to these rules that my brother Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. So Rami Bar Yecheskel did not. So our Gemara didn't say that, but there obviously was a gersa that on the second line of the Gemara before it said Shmuel, it said that Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. But Yecheskel said you can't trust everything my brother Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. Hachi Amar Shmuel Kozman Shemakira. Because Shmuel just said however long it takes for the kid to recognize. It doesn't matter. There's no time limit. It depends on every kid. It's very subjective for the different babies. Hahi da'asel kamei de Shmuel. A certain person came to Shmuel that, it was a woman. Hahi da'asel, a woman, and she was divorced, and she did not want to nurse the baby anymore. So because the Mishnah says that nursing is one of the things she does, it's for the malachos for the husband. So, but she's not married to him anymore, so she shouldn't have to, unless it's a danger for the baby to stop. So Amar le Rabdimi Bar Yosef. So Rabdimi Bar Yosef said to Shmuel to say Zil Badka, go check out the baby. Excuse me. Shmuel told Rabdimi Bar Yosef to check out the case if the baby recognizes the mother yet. Azal Osva Bidare Dinashe Vishaka Lebra. So he made up basically a lineup, a few different women. He brought the baby in. V'kamahaderle Elihu, and was taking the baby past all of the women to take a look at them. Ki mata legaba havika masve lapa. When he reached her, the baby reached the real mother. It was staring at the mother. Kivashtanhi le'ena mine. She was trying to hide her face from the baby. Amarla nataf enecha kum dare brech. Uncover your eyes, or look straight at him. Lift up your kid, and go lift up your kid. So this story seems to indicate that Shmuel's opinion was, because Shmuel told Rav Dimi to check it out. Was Rav Dimi? Yeah, to go check it out. And so this kid recognized the mother. So because the kid recognized his mother, it was at a stage where it would have been dangerous for the kid if she stopped nursing him. So even though she's divorced, I guess the husband would her ex-husband would have to pay her some type of I think he would have to pay her to keep on nursing her, but she can't refuse to nurse because it would be dangerous to the kid. So it's true from the perspective of Malach of her husband. It's now her ex-husband, so she doesn't have to do it for him. But for the baby, it would be dangerous for the baby because the baby won't nurse from anyone else at this point.
So she started nursing again.
Yeah. Now she's divorced from her husband.
And do we know how many days or months it was?
It doesn't taste, but at the top, the Gemara had three opinions. 90 days in the name of Shmuel, 30 days, and then 50 days. And so then we said that Shmuel's opinion wasn't 30 days, it's subjective. You have to check each kid. And this story was where Shmuel told Rav Dimi to take the kid and check if the kid recognized the mother.
How long Moshe Rabbeinu was without his mother?
But it doesn't. According to the Medrash, that he was born early, so then he was with his mother for about 3 months.
Oh, so he managed to recognize already before he was with him. No,
Right, and according to the Medrash, then he was back with his mother because Miriam told Basia, "Oh, I have a Jewish meinekes, a Jewish wet nurse," and it was his own mother, so he recognized her, so it wasn't a problem. So you have to Jeff Fusser to answer your question. Suma Minayada, how does a blind child know who his mother is? Ravashi Ravashi says through the smell and the taste. I saw somewhere, I didn't say they claimed the taste of the milk. But I don't know. But from the smell of the mother, the child would recognize it. So why did Gemara ask the question? What if the baby is blind? So from the previous story, you took a test past the mother and the baby was looking at the mother. How would we know if the baby couldn't see? So it would recognize its mother by smelling. So l'chora, the amount of time would be the same time. This seems from the Gemara. Now, in the baby books that I've read, wasn't recent, but it says that babies can recognize. Well, I don't know about recognize, but they could smell already very, very, pretty much right when they're born. So they can't see any shapes, even if they're or even any forms when they start opening their eyes. But their smell is much more developed very soon after they're born. But and still, in regard to this, maybe it's a little different. But for the halacha, this is what the halacha is. 2 dots. I don't know if we're still on A1. I forgot my art scroll in the other. So Amar Tanar Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa. Yonek Tenok B'holech Hades Me'Barba Chodesh. Mikan Be'elach Yonek Sheket Ziver Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yeshua Omer Afilu Arba V'Chamesh Shanim. So we learned in the Brisa that a baby can nurse for 24 months, and after that, it's like it's nursing from a sheketz, disgusting animal. This is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yeshua says even if it's 4 or 5 years old, but if the kid never stopped nursing, you could keep on nursing. But pirish la'achar esrim chodesh v'chazar kionik sheketz. But if after the baby was 24 months old, the baby stopped nursing, and then the baby started nursing, the kid started nursing again, that's like it's nursing from something from a disgusting animal. This isn't against the mother. It's saying it's not. It's an improper thing if the kid had been weaned and then was nursing again. Amar Mar Mikan ve'elach yonik sheket. So the brisa we just quoted, which actually a Tosefta, says that after 24 months, it's as if it's nursing from something disgusting. For a minhi, but I'll ask you a contradiction from a Gemara in Krisos. Yachal, it's a drasha. It's probably it may be a brisa. Yachal yehei chalav mahalche shtayim tamei. So basically, right now the Gemara is asking about the kosher status of human milk. That's the context of what the Gemara is talking about right now. Because what's the halacha? In general, the halacha is things that come out of live things are not permitted. There's two heterim, honey, which comes from bees, even though bees aren't even a kosher animal, and milk from kosher animals. And I think the Xeris Akasav, the pasuk that the Gemara that the Gemara learns it from, is Eretz Zavas Chalav Udvash, the land flowing with milk and honey. So even though the pashtus of the pasuk is it's flowing with milk from the dates, I think it was from the dates, and I don't remember the context. No, the honey is from dates, and the chalav, I guess, is from the cows. But the drasha is that literal honey that comes from bees you're allowed to eat, even though the bee is a not kosher animal. But obviously they each have their own halacha. So we know that milk that comes from not kosher animals is not kosher. And bees, even though bees aren't kosher, but their milk is kosher. And normally you can't eat anything that comes from a living animal. It's not necessarily because of, but it might be similar to Aver Min Achai. Just like you can't take something from a living animal and eat it because the animal is still alive. So if something comes from a living animal, you can't eat it either. The animal has to be dead for us to eat the animal. But this halacha is that you're allowed to eat milk from kosher animals and bees from honey. You don't have to, even though the bees are still alive, and even though the cow is still alive or the goat is still alive, you're allowed to eat the milk. So
honey's not really from the bees anyway. Yeah.
Well, now we know that.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about this in a bit, but the question is, what's the status of humans? Humans aren't kosher, right?
Mhm.
So let's read the Gemara and then we'll talk about this. Maybe I would say that milk from a two-legged creature is tame, meaning is not kosher. And what's a two-legged creature? A human. Vidinhu, but I'll teach you. An animal that you're lenient in regard to touching it, you're strict with its milk. So Rashi says that for a person we're strict to touch it, meaning when the woman is a nida, if you would touch her, you would become tame. So while she's alive, she can make you tame. Behema, that there's not a point during the animal's life that it's tame, but still, it's milk, I guess, this is talking about a not kosher animal. You're strict and you're not allowed to eat its milk. So a human, which we're strict that we're not allowed to touch a woman when she's a nida. I mean, you're allowed to, but if you do it, makes you tame. Certainly, her milk should be not kosher. Tamalomer is hagamal kimale gerahu. You can't have the camel because So the animal chews its cud, it brings up the gera, but I think it says then the pasuk continues, I think, but it's not the split hoof. So Rashi actually says, oh, I lost my place here. So the Gemara Bechora somewhere else says Gamal, when it talks about that a camel is not kosher, it says it 2 times. The Gemara learns out one that the camel is you're not allowed to eat the camel, and one is you're not allowed to have the milk from the camel. So the pasuk here in Shmini, Perkid Aleph, pasuk Dalet, this you cannot eat from the ones who chew its cud or from have a split hoof. As Hagamal Kimalege Rahu Farsa Inena Mafris. The camel, because it does chew its cud, but it doesn't have a split hoof. Tamehu lachem, it's tame for you. And then a shafan, which is some type of hair or whatever that is, an arneves, which is also some type of rabbit type thing. And well, Sus has neither. But the Torah lists the things. So the gamal, the shafan, and the arneves chew their cud, but they don't have split hoofs. And then the pig, it has a split hoof, but it doesn't chew its cud. So where's the second part? So the Torah Tamima points out that the other place where it mentions, the pasuk in Shmini only mentions camel once, but including the pasuk in Shmini and the pasuk in Parshas Re'eh is to show that is the drashas you can't have the Torah Tamima says, because if the Torah listed everything by detail in one place, when it reminds you of it in the other place, it doesn't have to say any detail. But from the fact that it mentioned camel again, so we learn a drasha that you can't have the camel, and you can't have the milk that comes from a camel. But we have another drasha. As Hagamal Kimalegiru, Hu Tame Ve'in Chal Mahal Cheshtaim Tame. The camel is not kosher to eat, but the milk of a two-legged creature is not forbidden to eat. Ela tahor. So then the Gemara asked, Yachal otzias chalav she'enu shava bakal, v'lo otzias adam shu shava bakal. Maybe I should exclude milk which isn't equal for anyone, meaning because not all two-legged creatures have milk, only females have milk. But I won't exclude blood, which is to everyone. Tamalomar hu tame ve'in dama halchishnaim tame. It is tame, but the blood of a two-legged creature is not tame ala tahor. But Amar Rav Sheshes, and Rav Sheshes says, Afilo mitzvos precious ein bo. There's not even a mitzvah of separating from a midrabanan from the milk. Meaning, so Rashi says that since the Torah says it's tahor, the Chachamim didn't even make a gzera, because we know that the Chachamim sometimes make a gzera. Let's say you can't have basar b'chalav, you can't have beef with milk that's cooked together, but they made a gzera, you can't have chicken meat either. And also, not just if it's cooked together, but even if it's roasted together. So we have all these, fences that they made to stop people from eating basar b'chalav. If we would allow you to eat this type of close relative to basar b'chalav, you might come to eat basar b'chalav itself. But Rav Sheshes was saying the Chachamim didn't even make any fences in regard to this mitzvah. So we see from this drasha that human milk is completely kosher to drink. So how come after 24 months, according to Rabbi Eliezer or according to Rabbi Yeshua, if the baby was weaned and then after 2 years old it started nursing again, how come the Gemara says it's like nursing from a disgusting thing? If it's completely kosher, why is the Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua calling it shakets? So the Gemara says, lo kasha. So that's not a question. Hada parish, hada lo parish. Because it's kosher as long as the milk has been expressed from the human and you're drinking it out of a container. But when you're drinking it straight from the human, then it's something that's sheketz, even for a kid that's more than 2 years old, or according to Rabbi Lazar, according to Rabbi Yeshua, more than 2 years old after it was weaned. So human milk is kosher for any person to drink as long as the milk has been expressed. The chilufa bedam, but that's the opposite halacha of dam, meaning milk is okay to eat. So we just had a drasha to say that blood from a person is okay and milk from a person is okay to eat. But there's an opposite detail of the halachas. So milk is only you're allowed to eat if it's separated from the person. But blood is the opposite. Kitana, we learned in a brayso, damsha al gabi kikar. Let's say someone was bleeding and they touched bread, so there's a little bit of blood on top of the bread. Goro v'achlo. You just you rub it off from the bread and you could eat the bread. We don't say that the bread is not kosher because blood was on it. Shebeina shinayim. Let's say you were bleeding in between your teeth. You were bleeding in your mouth. So do we have to rinse out your mouth and stop bleeding before you're allowed to eat, or can you eat even though when you chew the food and there's blood in your mouth, you're going to be eating the blood? So motzatov eino choshesh. You could suck the blood and it's not a problem. There's no isser. So blood is the opposite. When the blood is still connected to your body, it's not a problem to have your own blood. But once it's separated from your body, then you're not allowed to have it. If it fell on food, you have to scrape it off the food, but it doesn't render the food not kosher. But you're not allowed to eat it once it is separated from your body. So that's the opposite detail about the milk and the blood. Amar Mar, so we said before in this brisa, in a brisa, Rabbi Yeshua Amar Afilo Arba Chamesh Shanim. Rabbi Yeshua said the child can keep nursing even if he's 4 or 5 years old, as long as he never stopped nursing. V'hatanya Rabbi Yeshua Amar Afilo Chavilos Al Kseifav. Rabbi Yeshua says he could keep nursing even if he's holding some type of bundle on his shoulder. So the Gemara answers, it's not a contradiction between 4 or 5 years old and holding a bundle. It's the same amount, it's the same age. Rav Yosef, halacha Rabbi Yoshua. Rav Yosef says halacha is like Rabbi Yoshua, that if the kid keeps nursing after 2 years old, he can keep nursing up until the age of 4 or 5 or so. But obviously, if you stop nursing, you can't start nursing again. Okay, 2 dots. Oh, no, not so. So blood. So milk from humans is okay to eat, and if you're bleeding in your body or on your body, you're allowed to have you can eat your own blood if you're bleeding your mouth, whatever. But you couldn't eat human flesh probably. So there's an interesting Rambam. The Rambam says in Perek Beis of Hilchos Machal Sesor Salacha Gimel that human flesh, there's no prohibition against it, but there's a positive commandment to eat, what we will call kosher food, and that's not included in it. But there's no negative commandment against eating it, because the pasuk mentions 7 types of chayos, of wild animals, and says this is what you could eat. So that means that from the positive commandment, you can infer that anything that's not on this list, you're not allowed to eat. And a human is called a nefesh chaya in Parshas Bereishis. Anything that that Adam named to a nefesh chaya, that was its name. So there's no prohibition against eating human flesh. The Rabban and the Rashba argue on them, and they hold that for eating human flesh, there's no isser at all, not even from the positive commandment. However, that if a person had died, according to everyone, you're not just not allowed to eat it, but you're not allowed to have any benefit from a dead human body. It's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, I think, in the fifth parak, I think, and more than that. So like if you would bury a person somewhere, you couldn't use that stuff later for something else. So surprise, so it's not saying it could be a cannibal. It's not saying that, but it's just saying there's machlokas that according to the Rambam, there's from a mitzvah saseh, the fact that there's a list of animals we're allowed to eat. We understand we're not allowed to eat a human, but there's no negative commandment. And according to the Rashba and the Ramban, there's not even an isser aseh. There's not even humans aren't excluded from the list of animals that you could eat. They learned that when the Gemara said nefesh chaya, these are the list. So that's only an asmachta. It's not a binding drasha. It's a hint to remind you of something, but it's not a real drasha. Okay, 2 dots. Tana, Rabbi Marinos Omer, Gonech Yonek Shchalav b'Shabbos. So Rashi says it's Gonech, someone who's groaning from a certain heart ailment, pain. So and the treatment for this illness is to have warm milk straight from the goat. So the person who needs this is allowed to nurse straight from the goat on Shabbos. My timer why is it allowed? Yonik mafar kalachar yad uvmakum tzara lo gazra abanon. So to milk an animal, according to most Rishonim, except Rabbeinu Tam, is a lav of mefarek. So I actually mentioned this at the Oneg Shabbos a few weeks ago. So mefarek is a subcategory of dash, and dash is threshing. So just like threshing is, you crush the grain to get the edible part away from the non-edible part. I mean, obviously, first you have to crush it, and then you winnow it later, the next stage, because the chaff will get blown away when you lift it in the air. But it's separating the food part from the not food part. So milking a cow or milking a goat, you're separating the milk, which you could have now, from the body of the animal. So in general, milking would be also because it's a malacha called mefarek, which is a subcategory of dash, of threshing. But when the person is drinking it straight, nursing it from the animal, that's kalachar. That's an unusual way of milking. Normally you milk it into a container, and then you in those days, nowadays we would pasteurize and homogenize all the stuff, but in those days they didn't do all that stuff, but they still milked it into a container. So to drink the milk straight without having put in a container first, that's kalachar yad. So even though normally to do something kalachar yad would also be asur on Shabbos, but makom tzara lo gazer rabbanan, because of the pain from this person's pain from his sickness, the chachamim did not make gzeira and say in this case kalachar yad is forbidden. In this case, they allowed it in this case. Rav Yosef halacha Rav Marinos. Rav Yosef said that we passing like Rav Marinos. So this is a bunch of Rishonim. So basically, there's a Gemara in Yevamos. Tosfos mentions Abba Shaul says that we used to nurse from a kosher animal on Yantif. So the Gemara says and this is in regard to Shabbos also, if it's a sakanos nefashos, you could, if it's for danger of life, you could do it. You could be machal Shabbos in a regular way. It doesn't need to be kalachar yad. And if it's not dangerous, why are you allowed to do it on Shabbos? So whatever, from this Gemara in Yevamos, so they said we were able to nurse from it on Shabbos for medicinal purposes, but not, on Yantif, but not for Shabbos. So some Rishonim say that when the Gemara says halacha Rav Marinos, because even though our Gemara didn't mention that anyone argued on Rav Morenos, they learned that Gemara was an argument about Rav Morenos. But also a second thing that we learned is that a lot of Rishonim say that explicitly that if it was a sakanos nefashos on Shabbos, we wouldn't need Rav Morenos to teach us that it's mutter on Shabbos. We know that you could be machal Shabbos for chol sheyesh bo sakana, because we say it's better to desecrate one Shabbos in order to keep many other Shabbosos. Now Rabbeinu Tam himself, so I don't know exactly how we would learn this, because according to Rabbeinu Tam, milking a cow on Shabbos is not a problem of mafarek, of extracting the edible stuff from the non-edible thing, because the cow or the goat is not currently edible because it's alive, and it would be Avram and Achai to eat from it. So Rabbeinu Tam holds you're not allowed to milk a cow because it's like, he holds that when you're milking it, you're like the act of milking includes rubbing on the udder, and it's like erasing. So just like you're not allowed to write on Shabbos, you're not allowed to erase on Shabbos. And in those, and a malacha has to be for a constructive act. So you needed to erase something in order to write something else on it. Nowadays we have so much paper, it's a little different. But when I see Yochanan and Nathan writing Gittin, if he makes a certain, depending on a certain type of, if he writes something wrong, sometimes he makes a bigger letter over it, but sometimes he takes a little thing, a sharp thing, and he scrapes off the ink. It has to dry first off the paper, and then he'll write it correctly over that. So to erase in order to write again is a constructive malacha. So I get to milk a cow, if there's something on there, it's a constructive eraser in order to, I guess, milk the cow. But I didn't see how people say Rabbeinu Tam explains this Gemara, because it's explicitly talking about Mefarek. But from this Tosos, it quotes Rabbeinu Tam, he gives a different thing, that there's different types of illnesses, and some of these illnesses, neither of them are sakanos nefashos, but for one type of it, you would be allowed to do this on Shabbos, and in the other case, you wouldn't. It seems that for this illness, you could do it on Shabbos, there's no question. And the other Gemara in Yevamos, according to Rabbeinu Tam, seemed to be that they milk because there was a famine, and so they were hungry and pained from the famine. That's not something that you could be machal Shabbos. Well, that you couldn't nurse, you couldn't drink directly from the animal when it was due to the type of famine. Only from this illness that's causing you to scream out, and the treatment is having the warm goat milk. Some Rishonim ask, why don't we just have a goy do it? Because tell a goy to do it, and then a Jew isn't doing it. So they say that it has to be so warm that in the time that if a goy or anyone would milk it into a container, and then the patient would drink the milk, it wouldn't be able to make the person better. It had to be so warm or close enough to the temperature of the goat that if it would go into a container first, it would no longer help it wouldn't be a medicine.
I don't understand though, because I thought for eating, especially for eating, you need the milk. There's not I don't understand the problem like that.
What? So to milk a cow on Shabbos is one of the malachos. According to most Rishonim, it's a told of duh. Yeah, if you need a milk, if you need it for what? Just you need it for your meal?
Yeah.
So no, you're not allowed to do. You're not. If you need a challah for Shabbos, you're allowed to bake on Shabbos? No. So just because you need it for Shabbos isn't a reason that you're allowed to milk a cow on Shabbos. This person is sick with a certain type of sickness, and the treatment is to suckle directly from the goat. So Marina said in that case, even though it's not sakanos nefashos, he's not going to die from it. But because of his illness, the Chachamim said in this case, doing it kalachar yad and drinking it directly from the goat's udder is not the normal way of milking. Normally, you milk it into a container. So because it's kalachar yad, it's the unusual method. It's allowed to be done on Shabbos for this type of illness. Amar Rav Yosef, Tanya, Nachum ish Galia Omer. Nachum from Galia said, Sinor sha'alubo kaskasim. So some type of gutter, a pipe that was like for your gutter, had too much branches and stuff in it, and it was going to, because it was clogged. Basically, the gutter was clogged, and it was raining, whatever. And if you didn't unclog the gutter, it was gonna flood your house. So mamachan baragla betzina b'Shabbos ve'no choshesh. You can press it down with your foot on Shabbos privately. So if people don't see you doing it, you can press it down with your. So actually, I'm not. For whatever reason, I thought that this was a pretty much horizontal pipe, but from Rashi, well, Rashi's no proof. But I would say maybe if it's a downspout, it would be different. But no, from Rashi explains that because this is backed up, it's clogged up. If you wouldn't clear it out, the water would go on the roof and then go through the roof, because obviously they didn't have, or they didn't have in that climate, in those places, their construction materials was what wouldn't have been waterproof for that amount of water. So you could press it down privately on Shabbos, and you don't have to worry about it. Meaning, it's not usher. My taima, what's the reason? Misakin kalach yadhu. It's fixing it in an unusual method, kalach yad, with makom seda logozer be'abanan, and because to save you from loss of your house being flooded, the chachamim didn't make a gzera that doing the malacha, but normally to do a malacha, kalach yad is not permitted. Now, I just want to point out that a very, very common theme where we say do it kalach yad is when it's only muktzah. It's not talking about a diraisa. It's a derabana. So if you have your money on something, you left money on the table or a pen on the table, if you move a kalach yad, muktzah is only a whole midrabanan concept. So then when we talk about kalach yad in the cases of muktzah, that's doing something kalach yad for a derabanan, and there's rules about when you're allowed to move something like that. That's muktzah. But this is, or let's say a light switch, to turn on or off a light switch, according to the majority opinions, seems to be a diraisa. So you can't just say do a kalach yad and it's mutter. There would have to be other considerations. So normally we say kalach yad, it's muktzah, but muktzah is derabanan. These two cases in Gemara are talking about diraisas. Now, fixing the drain, it seems to be that the malacha is makabapatish, the final hammer blow, making something work again. So I guess the regular way, for those of us who clean gutters, the old-fashioned way, we put our hands in and we take out the leaves and stuff that's in there. So to take it out like that would be a regular way of cleaning the gutter. So that's not okay. But if you press down on it with your foot or whatever, that's not the normal way of doing it. It'll temporarily fix it till tomorrow, so you can fix it the right way. So because that's an unusual way of fixing it, so you're allowed to do that. Rav Yosef halacha kanacham ishgalia, and Rav Yosef said also the halacha is like nacham ishgalia. So it happens to be that because this is really a Hilchos Shabbos inyan and not a Ksuvas inyan, the Rush and the Rif bring this halacha in Gemara Shabbos, but they do pass in this way. And I think I mentioned on Shabbos, or at least one of the times I mentioned, this Gemara has ramifications to plunging a clogged toilet on Shabbos. So in the English here, Shmir Shabbos Kehilchasa, it says, where rainwater is unable to flow away because of a blockage in a gutter or drainage pipe and is causing a flood, one may clear the stoppage with the assistance of an article which is not muktzah. So that's based on our Gemara. It's not exactly what our Gemara says. However, where a yard is flooded by rainwater, one may neither dig a channel through which the water could flow away, because that would be plowing, and you're not allowed to clear an existing channel which has become filled with earth or debris, because that's a yard. But for your house, you are allowed to clear it in a kalach yad way, because that's our Gemara. a domestic rubber plunger, but not the larger variety used by professional plumbers, may be employed to unblock a clogged sink or toilet bowl if there's an important need for it. So if the toilet's clogged, there's people in the house, you're gonna need a toilet. So the Shmir Shabbos Kochasa says you could use a regular household plunger. He doesn't say using kalach yad or not. It seems that that it's probably better to do a kalach yad because I'm not aware of special plungers that professional plumbers use. Maybe in Israel it's different. I don't know. But instead of if you normally hold it like this, maybe push it with your forearm or something like that. That would be kalach yad for a plunger. So that's what the English Shmir Shabbos Kochasa says. So this other book, Rabbi David Rabbi Atzur Hamalachos book says arguments for a lenient ruling on plunging a toilet to the sink is based on the fact that it's typical or regular use. The blockage isn't super big. It's easily fixed and it's a partial blockage. So I did see ridiculous to me it seems a little ridiculous. They said that if the toilet commonly gets stuffed up, then plunging it is part of regular use. You can do it on Shabbos, it's considered regular use. But if your toilet doesn't normally clog, you couldn't plunge it on Shabbos. So it's a silly thing. But according to this, so he says, but this is for common drain problems, but a severe drain blockage, which would require a professional, you certainly cannot fix it on Shabbos. Okay, some poskim question the veracity of the lenient opinions. They argue that the blockage of a toilet or sink represents a state of disrepair that is not substantially different from a clogged drain cited by the Gemara as examples of bona, which is building, and they would prohibit plunging on Shabbos because you're building the pathway for it to go out. So they say that it's usur. So
Wait, so you can do it, philosopher, yeah?
so it seems some poskim say you could use a regular household plunger, even not kalach yad. To be safe, it certainly wouldn't be certainly would be a good idea if you can do a kalach yad to do a kalach yad.
But nowadays, if you have a second bathroom, then you,
So that's a good question. So if you have another toilet, you don't need to use that one. You could just close it for Shabbos and not do it. So it's a good point, a very good point. Because if you have another bathroom and it's not too inconvenient to use, so then there's no need to fix this. So if part of the reason was kavod brios, so probably the fact you have another bathroom, it may not be a heter. Interesting point. Okay, so let's continue. According to Rabbi Yoshua's opinion, if the child was stopped nursing and then sometime after the age of 2 started nursing again, it's like nursing from something disgusting. Bekama. So how long did this weaning period have to be that he can't start nursing again? Amar Rav Yehuda bar Chaviv Amar Shmuel Shlosha Yamin. 3 days. Ikeda Amri, some said, Tani Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva Kamei de Shmuel Shlosha Yamin. It's not that Shmuel said 3 days, but Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva said the name of in front of Shmuel for 3 days. And it doesn't seem that Shmuel rejected it. Tana Rabbanon, we learned to the Brisa, second line up from the bottom on Samach Amud Aleph. If a woman was nursing and her husband died within the 24, so she had a baby that was less than 24 months old, she cannot. So the Gemara here says lo tisare, she can't have erison. It's not so simple that is usur, but certainly lo tinase, she can't get married with chuppah until the 24 months have passed. So Rashi says the reason is if she would get married and she gets pregnant from her new husband, she will have to wean the baby in order that because when she's pregnant she'll stop producing milk, and since her new husband is not the the 1-year-old's father, he's not going to splurge to buy not just milk. Rashi says baits and v'chalav, eggs and milk for the baby. Now there's a Gemara in Yevamos that's similar to our Gemara, but it's a slightly different case. That Gemara says that a woman who is pregnant is not allowed to get married. So there's a halacha that let's say if someone gets divorced or someone gets widowed, you have to wait 3 months. We paskin it's 94 days to make sure that because if she would become pregnant, if let's say she would give birth, if she would get remarried immediately and she had a baby 7 months later, we don't know if it was a 9-month-old baby from the first husband or an early baby, a 7-month-old baby from the second husband. So if you wait 3 months, you could tell if a woman is pregnant after 3 months. So we'll know if the father is the first husband or the second husband. So it's a very important thing. So we know who the husband is. So
Why?
well, let's say the first husband was a Cohen.
Okay.
So whether it's if the kid's a Cohen or Levi, or just in general, who was his father in regard to does he inherit the estate of the first father, that first husband, or not? We have to know who the kid's father is. So even so, halachically, once we know who's the father, who the kid's father would be, but the Chachamim said a separate thing that a pregnant woman is not allowed to get married, and the Gemara. So one of the reasons is because no, see, I didn't look it up. One of the reasons is we're worried that the new husband might during intercourse might injure the fetus, and he doesn't care because it wasn't his kid. But it seems that another problem is maybe he would want to have his own baby, so the first baby won't be able to be nursed for 24 months. So there was a shaila that came up about 15 years ago that a certain woman, it came up in Israel, a certain woman, she didn't think she was ever going to get married. She was in her early 40s, and she had artificial insemination, and so she became pregnant. And then she met a guy, and they wanted to get married. And Rav Ovadia Yosef, the Shiloh went all the way up and wrote, and it was in the newspapers. This is why that Rav Ovadia Yosef paskin that they're allowed to get married, and there's no problem about the nursing because they can use baby formula. So that was something that Rav Ovadia Yosef used. That it's much easier to buy formula than to find a wet nurse, I guess. So that Gemara is related to this Gemara, but it's talking about a separate point of this Gemara. But nowadays, based on that psak, if you accept that psak, there would be certain heterim. So also say nowadays we know that that the babies do switch from nursing at a certain age and then they use bottles. So the fact that they need to nurse from the same mother for the 24 months and then they start eating food, whatever, is not, we know that that's not the way that our babies work anymore. So it's not dangerous if she stops nursing him. But it is possible that if a baby is used to nursing, they won't want to take a bottle. That's possible. But if the baby was trained and the baby has no problem taking a bottle, for some of these cases, the wife may not need to be, or the ex-wife, whatever, may not need to be forced to continue nursing because of the ease and availability of formula.
I have a question. So all these laws about divorce and so back in those days, was divorce a major problem, or was it a minor problem that they just were smart enough to look ahead to see if it did happen occasionally, we'd have these laws in place?
Well, you mean, do we know if it's if she would be divorced and remarried?
Well, and
Or you're talking
all the
about in these cases?
I mentioned,
Well,
if they're divorced.
I don't know, the Gemara mentions these things. I mean, it
Right.
doesn't seem like it was an emergency. I mean, the Gemara is a little interesting that on Amar Aleph, we said a divorced woman came to Shmuel and said, do I have to keep nursing my kid? And then Shmuel says, well, it depends if the kid will recognize you or not. Go Rabdimi, go test the kid and see if he recognizes the mother or not.
Right.
So, I mean, that seems the halacha was they already knew the halacha.
Right, so I'm saying, is it just because of certain incidents that happened that they were able?
Yes, I don't know if they,
Or was it a major issue in society?
I don't know. What you mean was divorce that common that they
Right.
had the framework for this? Or they knew how the Torah is a thorough document
Right.
and we'll figure out that if these things would happen, we'll be prepared. The Chachamim were Boy Scouts. I don't know. So we said that she can't get married. So Argamar included that she can't even take Kiddushin, which isn't so pashut because she's not getting married yet. But Velotinasi, the fact that she can't have chuppah until 24 months, this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, because he's worried that the new father said, oh, it's not my kid. I'm not going to care if I hope my wife gets pregnant and then she won't be making milk anymore, and I'm not going to spend the money for milk and eggs for the kid. Rabbi Yehuda Mater, Bishmonos Chodesh. Rabbi Yehuda allowed her to get married after 18 months. That the child doesn't need a full 24 months of nursing. Rab Nasan bar Yosef, or it might be Rab Yonasan ben Yosef. Hein divrei Beis Shammai, hein divrei Beis Hillel. This is the opinion of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, or this machlokas is really a machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai omrim esrei v'arba chodesh, Beis Hillel omrim shmona asar chodesh. Because Beis Shammai says you would have to wait 24 months to get married till the baby had full 24 months of nursing, and Beis Hillel says you're allowed to wean the kid after 18 months, and it's not a health problem. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, as aniach rila divrei omer esrei v'arba chodesh, I will paskin that according to the opinion that it has to be 24 months, she's allowed to get married after 21 months. And according to the opinion that Rabbi Yehuda and Beis Hillel, that she can get married after 18 months, she's allowed to get married already after only 15 months. Why? Because the milk doesn't dry up until 3 months after there would be a new pregnancy. So it's true, if she gets pregnant, her body will stop producing milk and she won't be able to nurse her little kid. But Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that takes 3 months. So even if we need the baby to nurse for 24 months, she get married after 21 months because there will be milk till 24 months. Amar Ula said, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. We pass on Rabbi Yehuda that 18 months is not 24 months. Amar Mar Okva li hit to Rabbi Chanina laseis la'achar chamisha asar chodesh. Rabbi Chanina allowed me to get married after, or laseis from the word nesuin, so the chuppah after 15 months, which would be like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's psak. Arisa d'Abaye asal kamei d'Abaye. A sharecropper of Abaye came to Abaye with a shaila. Amar le mauli ars b'chamisha asar chodesh. Am I allowed to have erisin? So this isn't chuppah. But I said on the last line of the previous amud that the shaila of erisin, that the prohibition against erisin is not so clear. So that's from this Gemara here. So he says, am I allowed to give erisin with 15 months? Amar le chada. So the Rabbi Meir of Rabbi Yehuda, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. So he's saying, first of all, there's a machlok between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Do you have to wait 24 months or 18 months? We pass like Rabbi Yehuda. 18 months. So 18 months. And also when there's a machlok between Shabbos and Hillel, we pass like Beis Hillel. So that also allows 18 months. Amar Ula halacha Rabbi Yehuda, and Ula said we pass like Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Mar Ukva lihi to Rabbi Chanina laseis abar chamisha asar chodesh. And Mar Ukva says the Rabbi Chanina allowed me to have chuppah with my new wife after 15 months that she was nursing. So kol shekein da'at li ares, certainly you, who you're not doing chuppah, you only want to do erisin, it's certainly mutter for you to do erisin after 15 months. So that was Abaye's psak. Yaskal made Rav Yosef. So then I guess Abaye told his Rebbe Rav Yosef about this. Amar le, Rav Yosef said to him, Rabu Shmuel, the Amri Chabaye Tzrich lahamtin esmer v'arba chodesh. Chutz miyom shenal ba chutz miyom shadisar sabo. Rav and Shmuel both paskin that she has to wait 24 full months, excluding the day that the baby was born and excluding the day of the erisin. So Rahat Basre Tlasa Parsi. So Rabbi chased after his sharecropper for 3 parsos. The Amila Parsa B'chala, and some say it was only 1 parsa, but it was running through sand, which it's hard to run. Below Adroche, and he wasn't able to catch up to him to correct his psak. So basically, Abai was saying that he had passed it incorrectly. So according to this, the last line of the previous summit, there's no difference between Erison and Nesuin, but there is a Tosos about it in Yevamos. So Amar Abaye after this incident. So I don't know, just a separate thing. What's the significance that he ran after him? We understand why he wanted to run after him, but a couple months ago I mentioned Gra from Megillas Rus that once Rus accepted the mitzvot, she physically got weaker. So when I was at Keren B'Yavneh, someone showed me. He was part of, I think, the Maritz Chayas's autobiography, and was saying that the Chachamim are weak because they sit and learn, and I guess they don't get exercise, so they have certain health problems because they don't exercise enough. It happens to be that I think Zev Aleph, who was previously at HTC, and then he moved out of town. In his research in American Jewish history, he mentioned some incidents where Rosh Yeshivas from Europe came in the 20s or 30s to fundraise, and they were shocked that the boys were playing ball.
So I have to check. I know 1 or 2 rabbis that do exercise, that run. So they're the real chachamim.
Right. No, nowadays we know that it's important to exercise and be healthy, and not just for the Rabbanim, for the Balabatim also.
Right.
But in the Rav Gustman biography from Art School, for whatever that's worth, it talks about I think in Grudno near Rav Shimon Shkab, that the boys, I don't know, would begin for Festivus, they would take a metal pole or some type of metal beam and they would bend it. But then there was one boy who took the crooked beam and he straightened it out, and he said, "This is much harder." So these feats of strength. So I mean, I guess overall that wasn't indicative that they were engaging in aerobic cardiovascular exercise, but they with their hands would have, I guess, good finger strength or something. But they didn't play ball. It could be though historically, so a lot of the sports might have developed a lot more in this country than in Europe. That might also be true also. But on a separate note, Rabbi Rakefet said, why were the American boys, why were they so much less knowledgeable than the European born? Because he said, I knew every New York Yankees stat, in the book, because the kids were memorizing sports statistics. So instead of knowing Tanakh by the time they were 8, we knew baseball. This one's batting average, and this one's home run, and this and that. And there's a lot of truth to what Rabbi Rakefet said. Oh, so if Chachamim are weaker, the fact that Abaye ran and couldn't catch up to him is no chiddush. So what was it trying to tell us? So perhaps it's telling us that to make a certain effort, maybe he wouldn't have caught up to him, but if he would at least see him, he can call out to him and get him to stop. He had to make some type of effort to correct his erroneous psak. And then also, but there's also many the halachas about this in So let's just read the next couple lines and I'll say what I want to say next. Amar Abaye, Hay Milsad Amar Rabbanan Afilu Biyasa Bekuchta Lo Lishre Inish B'Makom Rabbe. Even the halacha that you could eat egg with kutach. A kutach was a dip made up of old crusty bread and yogurt and stuff like that. So it's a milchig dip. So in regard to Pesach, the Gemara in Pesachim talks about it a lot. Since the bread was so old and possibly moldy, it doesn't have a status of chametz or not. But it also was something that was milchig because it had like yogurt stuff in it. So the fact that you could eat it with an egg, I think Tosos points out it's not. Obviously, we know eggs are parav, so the chiddush must be that it's talking about an egg that you shachted the chicken and you found the egg inside. So it's a big in Yordea, and so nowadays it's not because we don't shacht eggs. I mean, we don't shacht chickens and find an egg inside because they would shacht it in the shacht house, and if it's a chicken laying egg, it may not even shacht it because they have, if they're good at laying eggs, they make more money from it laying eggs and they wouldn't shacht it. But what was it, 2011 or so, and the shul sponsored me right after I became the associate rabbi for the Ari Zivotofsky and Ari, the special Masora food dinner. So they had fleshik eggs there. So they were eggs that they, from the chicken, they were shechting, and the eggs were not fully formed inside. So those eggs are not considered eggs, they're considered fleshiks. But I mean, there's a big machlokas. I think definitely if there's a shell already and it hadn't laid it, we know that's parv. And I think me'ikar adin, if you see there's a clear sac around the egg, it's really parv also. Except the women, the Shulchan Aruch mentions that the women were strict and they treated those as fleshik eggs also. But then also, if it would be a fleshik egg, then you would have to salt it, just like you would have to salt the meat of the chicken or the flesh, of the chicken. But
I don't know. There must be something different nowadays because, many years ago, you used to have blood in an egg occasionally, and now
yeah,
I never see it. Never.
yeah.
Absolutely never.
It might be Rabbi Broyd from Atlanta. Someone like him, maybe I think it was him, but I might be wrong, wrote an article and saying that nowadays with the commercial eggs, you don't have to check the eggs for blood.
Yeah, I don't know why. or how.
Once we had like a dozen eggs, and like most of those dozen eggs had blood in them. There's something must have been from that chicken, or another time it was those eggs. We had all these from in one container. We had a whole bunch of twin
But
yolks.
even when Sam
and
and
an
I
egg.
first got married, we used to have to, because I don't know, we used eggs in baking or something, or in challah. I don't.
So you would
know.
look a lot and you'd find the
You
red.
would
in them.
open, you would have to open each egg in a separate dish, just to check,
Yeah, so the regular, so there are opinions, and Ramosha Salvation feels you can rely on them, that the commercial eggs you buy, you don't even have to check. And if you see something
Yeah.
red, you could take the red spot out, but you don't even have
Yeah,
to.
I don't know how,
But
they
if
used
it's a
to
farm
feel.
egg, then it's more likely. I had eggs from, I'm trying to remember where, but I had non-commercial eggs, and there were spots in a lot of them.
Right. Yeah, but they, we used to buy candled eggs.
Yeah. So I don't know. It might be part of the process is they candle them as they're going down the thing, so they take those out. That's possible also. I don't know.
Maybe.
I've never been to the egg.
It's a candle there.
So, in the old days, especially for Pesach, my father-in-law would get us, a case of eggs for Pesach, for everybody. And, they run it down the line with a candle behind or a light behind, so you can see through the shell. and
It's just a
tell-
light there, so you could see if there's a spot in there or not. So without having to open the egg,
Yeah.
they can tell.
But they don't do it anymore. Because I'm telling you, maybe there's something in the process where you
Yeah.
don't have a problem anymore.
Yeah, so I did read somewhere a few years ago already, but they're saying like if Moshe Feinstein had a hard-boiled egg, he would take off the white and then look on the outside of the yellow to see if he saw any blood spots on it. But according to the notates, when you had to check the eggs, so they were saying, the part of this article is saying, can you eat hard-boiled eggs, or you have to always check for blood? So they were saying Rav Moshe Feinstein ate it, but he looked on the outside of the yolk to see if there would be a red spot on there, and if there would have been, he wouldn't have eaten it. But I don't know what Rav Moshe Feinstein would hold nowadays. I don't know if anyone knows what Rav Moshe Feinstein would hold nowadays. But Rabbi Broid, I think, wrote an article and said commercial eggs now you don't even have to check.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So, but the point what I was saying is that Beitzim, we know our shahakal. I mean our parav, and the kutach we know is milchik. So there's no problem to eat parav with milchiks. So Tosa is trying to say, well, what? So Abaye says even the fact that you're allowed to eat milk with an egg with yogurt, you shouldn't paskin that it's mutter when your Rebbe is there. La mishum demechsi ka'afkirusa, not because this isn't the word apikorsus, it's afkirusa. Not because it's chutzpahdik, ela mishum de lo mistayte milsa lameimra de ha'ana have a gemira le. Oh, no. The milsa lameimra, because it's not because of chutzpah, but it's just because I may make a mistake. I learned the psak of Rav and Shmuel that that you're not allowed to even get engaged till 24 full months have passed. But still, when the shaila actually happened, I didn't remember it and I paskin wrong. So there's a whole sugya here in of itself. When did you do paskin? And I remember Ramati, the Rosh Hashanah can be Avna. Now he's the Nasi. He retired to two Rosh Hashanah. He's the Nasi. He gave a whole share klali and a bunch of questions. The Madrich told us later that he and his chavrusa asked the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Mordechai Greenberg, a lot of questions about it, and he formulated the share klali in regard to this. But there's a lot of when you could paskin with your Rebbe, or if your Rebbe is a certain distance away, then you can paskin. So it could be that when he was within the 3 parsos of his Rebbe, he had to rectify his psak. And when he ran that far away and he didn't see the sharecropper to correct the psak, no, he's no longer considered within the vicinity of his Rebbe, and now he may not be liable, not that it's liable, but for giving the wrong psak by mistake. So that's I'm trying to say, why was the significance of that he tried to chase the sharecropper for 3 parsos to try to correct the psak. So there are gemaras. It's the main sugya is in Erevin, but it came up in Sanhedrin. We were learning Sanhedrin that year for in regard to halachas of paskening with your Rebbe. And Tosos points out that if your Rebbe gives you permission to paskin, then you could paskin if you're even in the vicinity of your Rebbe. So in regard to, it's not usher to paskin if he gives you permission, but still you might paskin wrong. So when Abaye says don't paskin if your Rebbe's around, it still might be a good idea not to paskin. So we'll leave it here. And for whatever reason, for this Gemara seems to have a lot of practical halachos that we're able to discuss some of those points.